Welcome to episode 156 of the Necronama.com. The Necronama.com is proud to announce that we've partnered with the Horror Writers Association and the Stanley Hotel and Gemma Amore and Laurel Hightower to bring you the official Stoker Con pre-party. We want you to join us on May 10th, 2022 at the iconic Stanley Hotel, where horror authors including Stephen Graham Jones, Gabino Iglesias, Haley Piper, Gemma Amore, and Laurel Hightower will be reading some of their works. Additionally, the No Sleep podcast will perform a 1-hour live version of their award-winning horror fiction podcast. There will be meet and greets, ghost hunting, and a lot of drinking with authors. You're not going to want to miss it. A link to ticket information and room packages is available in the liner notes of this episode. The Necronama.com is now a proud affiliate of Libsyn, one of the top podcast hosting networks in existence. See this episode's show notes for our unique promo code to get up to 2 free months of podcasting services with Libsyn. Get your show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Get critical audience-building stats and all the support you need to sound your best. They even do video. Bring your podcast to life and have your voice heard here, there, everywhere with Libsyn. Check our show notes for the unique promo code and get podcasting. Now in their 18th year, Fright Rags has been bringing you the best in horror apparel and accessories since 2003. Offering a wide range of products for your favorite creature features, slasher flicks, and cult classics. Officially licensed collections include titles like John Carpenter's The Thing, The Evil Dead, Creepshow, Jaws, the Halloween franchise, and so many more. Head on over to fright-rags.com. Make sure to sign up for their SMS and email newsletter to never miss a drop. Listeners get 10% off when they use the code NECRO10, all caps, at checkout. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now. And when there's a naked man hovering above my bed, I don't just go back to sleep.
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, co-host of this podcast. And I'll be honest, I mean, when James sees me hovering above his bed...
He does go back to sleep, doesn't he? Just drops right back off. Sleeps like a baby.
He feels so comfortable.
This episode has already derailed. How exciting. Laurel Hightower is back. Laurel, you just don't learn. You keep coming back and dealing with us. It's so terrible. It's true. Now we're happy to have you back. So thanks for joining us.
I won't even say welcome because you know, just like a couple other people, you're always here. So I don't have to welcome you.
I'm like that kid that doesn't go home. And so you feel sorry for me and you give me like some dinner.
Like Cousin Oliver on the Brady
Bunch. We got very
Bunch.
dark here now.
So before we derail too far, would you like to tell our listeners a bit about yourself, Laurel?
I think everyone's so fucking tired of me, aren't they? Like, I mean,
no, not at all.
Just never off Twitter. But okay, if you haven't been totally bored by all of my constant posts, my name is Laurel Hightower. I am a horror writer. Apparently at this point, I'm almost as much of an editor as a writer, given that we're putting out our 3rd anthology this year. And I am mostly known for being Tiny's mom. That's me.
That's right. Because Tiny's the best.
Yeah.
So let's start with your many anthologies and the new book that's coming out and all of that good stuff. Which one do you want to start with?
Well, we can, since The Dead Inside is already out, can just touch on that real quick. So that is an identity horror anthology that I co-edited with Sandra Rutan of Dark Dispatch. And that came out on March 1st. It's been getting really good reviews so far, which makes me very happy because I'm super, super proud of all of our authors. And apparently if you get me talking about it long enough, I'll just cry. So if anybody needs that for ratings, you can have me on to talk about The Dead Inside and I'll just start crying.
Well, we always need ratings, so let's talk about this book. Oh, no.
Oh, God.
And then, of course, you have the new novella dropping this week as well. Well, this week when the episode comes out, but
Oh, I was going to say, I forgot about that whole time differential. Yes, this week in the future.
Wink, wink.
Yeah. My novella Below is coming out from Ghoulish Books, which is the brand new horror imprint of Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing. And it is my take on Mothman. So it's the only time I've ever done a creature feature, and it was really fun.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it. I read it early, and I don't know. It was one of those things that it wasn't exactly what I expected, but it was this whole other thing I didn't know I needed in the mythology, and yeah, I just loved it. So Excellent. Everybody should check it out.
Excellent.
Everything I want to talk about would, be a spoiler, so we can't do that. So after you read it, feel free to DM me, and I'll be like, I know, right? And then what about this part? and we'll go from there. So then you have some other anthology coming out. Is that true?
Yeah, I know you probably didn't know anything about this because, but yes. So James and I are putting out an anthology, Shattered and Splintered, that comes out. Do we actually have a publication date? I know
May
what it's
10th.
supposed to be before. May 10th. Oh, that is the pub date. Okay. God, I'm so good at this job.
I believe so. I don't know. It's up to the publisher. May 10th-ish.
Okay. So some guy is going to make this decision for us.
But we don't know. We're not told things.
It's a charity actually, it's kind of scary when you are in charge and someone's like, do you want to do this? And you're like, I need an adult. But so this is a charity anthology that is coming out, and it is to I can't think of words. Benefit. Okay. It is for the benefit of the Glen Haven Volunteer Fire Department, who were responsible for saving the Stanley Hotel during the 2020 California wildfires. So that is kind of being put out in conjunction with the Spirited Giving event that we're having at the Stanley on May 10th, that I really just strongly suggest, if you can make it to at all, we would love to have you. I think it's going to be awesome.
Absolutely. It's weird for me. I spend so much time tweeting about it and writing about it and working on all this stuff behind the scenes that sitting here listening to someone else describe it, I'm like, oh, wow, that event sounds cool. And then I'm like, it's weird. Anyway, Don, I believe you have something with the anthology too, don't you?
Huh? What? I don't know. I'm just one of these weirdos that was asked to do something. I'm like, well, I've got this one story I've got an idea about. Let me throw it in there. Then these two just horrible editors, just mean people that were in charge of this.
Well, Laurel wasn't mean to you. It was just me.
I like this. Here's something you could do to make it better. And so it made me feel so much better because I have people like James and Laurel, especially Laurel, but people like James who will say things like, hey, I have some suggestions, and he immediately thinks I'm going to beat him up, as opposed to looking at it and saying, like, you guys are making it better. So I didn't know how to write it in an email to Laurel. So when I remembered that she was on the episode today, I was just going to say, thank you for making my story even better. Because I like the original concept, and I'm not one to shy away from criticism, constructive criticism, criticism that's going to help make whatever I'm doing better. So yeah.
Actually, I think
and I will be taking topless photos at the Stanley.
Excellent.
I could just take the photos when you're hovering over my bed, apparently. But
that was the whole thing. I mean, they had to come to the room.
Like legitimately, I just want to say thank you to both of you for supporting this whole idea and helping create it and becoming full partners and making this shit come to fruition. I think it's going to be an amazing event. And if anyone out there wants to check it out, the link is simply bit.ly/spirited giving. And you can pull it right up and look at it. It's going to be a fun night with a bunch of horror authors reading stories, and the No Sleep podcast is doing a live performance. And then we have, meet and greets and book signings and cocktail hour with authors, which we're having at the beginning of the event because I believe in adding chaos. And then making a bunch of authors drink first will definitely help the night go better. And then we have like midnight ghost tours at the Stanley Hotel. I mean, it's going to be a blast. So if you can make it, please do.
Also,
Hold second,
saw
James.
that we're on we're listed on like a stayhappening.com as an event.
Whoa.
Yeah, I feel good about that. And also, I don't think it was bit.ly. Isn't it bit.ly?
Oh, did I say LE? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
See,
if you check the show notes, you'll have the link. I'm not nervous. I just...
No. Here's
I heard
what it
the
is.
time changed.
No, I'm going to stop you right now, James, because I'm not going to let you get by on this shit. Or Laurel, either one of you. So anybody who's listening to this episode, which, of course, if you are listening to this episode, you'll hear me say this. These two motherfuckers have been working their asses off on this. So if you want to be part of something and seeing the end result of somebody busting their asses to get everything arranged, everything set up, get things coordinated. Like, I feel like a slouch because I just wrote a story and I got to bounce some of the ideas off of, or James bounced ideas off of me and I threw a couple at him. And then I get to drive a couple of people around because I'm driving from Mississippi to Colorado. So I'm like, I'm not going to miss out on this unless something chaotic happens. If you're in the area and you like horror, you want to be able to meet people who've written stuff that you like, or even just to thank somebody who has participated in making sure that this shit gets done, show up. Or donate some money. I mean, this is a great cause that this money is going towards, because it's not simply something where you can't trace where the money is going. I mean, there is so much transparency with this, the link to the hotel, the history of the hotel, the fire department, and just so much cool stuff that you can participate in and help out a very worthy cause at the same time. And make James cry. That's going to be my point of the whole week. Is just to make
that's easy to do. All you got to do is punch me once.
Is that going to be like a dunking booth kind of? Like you pay for an opportunity to make James cry? He'll have his own like booth.
Oh, it's going to be like high school. That's exciting.
Oh God! And I'm not coming. I'm still not over that.
So here comes my best segue ever. You ready for this? Yes. I'm truly excited about how this is like a reunion of sorts, and it's like my picked family, right? So it's like a little family reunion, unlike one of my real family reunions, which would turn out exactly like the movie The Dark and the Wicked. Because anytime I'm around my family, that's how it goes. Anyway.
It turns out better than my family reunions. What are you talking about?
So, Laurel, you legitimately picked this film, unlike a lot of people that I push into picking films. So why did you pick this?
Well, I picked it because I fucking loved it. This was one that I watched like shortly after it came out, which is not the sort of thing I normally do because I'm hugely behind on everything. But I loved it. It was totally atmospheric and scary and different. And also because it has my flat out favorite line in a horror movie ever, which is when the brother says, "And I didn't imagine it because that don't happen." And I just wanted to applaud because that's like one of my most hated tropes. It's like, hello, person that I'm related to and or married to and or have known for years and years and trust implicitly. Shit, did you see something crazy? That's it. Nut house for you. I'm going to completely ignore everything that you say. That's just, no. Why would you? It's just a trope that irritates me.
I feel like it's so true to life, though, because that is how my family works. Anything I say couldn't possibly be true. So,
but that's applicable to that hurt my feelings as opposed to just, I just saw, grandma floating over the farm.
And it's not like he's not experiencing it, Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like if he never saw anything and then he was just like, okay, crazy sister, I'd get that a little more, but it's so strange to me.
Well, and I love the way that they address and immediately dismiss that as a plot device and as a way for that to go. Like, thank you. Let's skip over the boring shit where everyone argues about whether it's real. Let's stick right with, like, you're not allowed to deny the reality of the situation. It's right here slapping you across the face. And I love that because, again, that whole, like, you're imagining it, that has got to be the dumbest thing anyone has ever said. We all know, for the most part, people know what is in your imagination, in your own head, as opposed to, I don't know, I've got a crazy imagination. I just completely visualized this woman, this dead woman. Sure. Okay. Most people know the difference.
Yeah, and how used to hallucinations are you, buddy?
Yeah. You're right. That does make me more concerned for the people who make that accusation. It's cool. I hallucinate stuff like that all the time. Oh, you concern me.
Don, do you have a lot of normal hallucinations? Or?
Oh man, here are my hallucinations. Well, I should say the stuff that I see. It's normally like that shit out of the side of in your peripheral vision, where you're like, oh, I fucking just saw somebody move, or I just saw something walk over here or something. That's the extent for me. Other than, the times that I was severely sleep deprived in previous occupations that still plague my nightmares. I can't reasonably say that I've had any hallucinations that weren't caused by some other substance. So
yeah. And in that case, it's like, wow, I was tripping balls and I saw that. I should maybe address this at a time when I am no longer doing so.
Yeah. So I'm like,
absolutely,
never drinking that again.
Yep. Or I'm going to drink it again at the earliest opportunity.
Yes.
Well, you have to try it again to see if it was caused by that.
Yeah. See if you see the same apparition every time.
What flavor of CBD was that again?
Peach. What? No.
Oh, man. Don't start with the peach.
God, they're so good, though.
We have no idea what we're doing. And it's brought to you by CBDs. No. So, Laurel, where do you want to start with this overall? You're in charge here. We're going to follow you.
Okay. Well, I started taking notes immediately, but I will say that I love the how quickly they get to the setting and how with just sort of brushstrokes they really capture the isolation of this place, the exhaustion of working a farm, of living a farm life. And, just kind of the layers of grime that are over everything. Because we had horses for a long time because I'm the most cliche Kentuckian you've ever met. And it gets over everything. It doesn't matter how much you wash your hands, how much you wash the horses, whatever. There is this grit, this grime of it. And it was all over that house. And I thought that was really cool. And also I have a random note here just because this really was weird to me. The creepy mannequin room at the beginning.
Oh my God.
Have you ever seen a mannequin with eyelashes? Because I got to say, I haven't. Ones that protrude from their face. That creeps me out for some reason.
Sadly, I have.
That's weird.
You
really?
have? So that's a thing? They should not do that.
But I didn't think about how weird it was until you pointed it out, because I've seen both. And I've seen the ones that, of course, we've all seen the ones with no eyes, where it's just the shape of the head and everything. But yeah, I didn't think about how weird that was, or at least how different that was, because I've seen a good number of mannequins in my days of shopping and traveling. But I just found the room creepy.
Yes. Well, I kept waiting for something to move.
Yes.
In there. And I think that's good too, is they immediately start building the tension with something could. But then I'm going to skip right to the tensest, most fucked up scene in this entire thing, which is the finger chopping.
Oh, man.
Which, how many times have you watched that in a horror movie? You've watched someone chopping and you're sort of tense, waiting for them to accidentally cut themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then she just straight up cuts off 2 fingers and then keeps chopping them. That was intense.
Beautiful.
Oh, that's not social commentary. I'm just saying it was.
Sure, it is.
Well, it's just like teeth. You look at any of these fears that we typically have, right? Because I had a professor, I'm obviously back in college, but I had a professor who was missing a couple of hands because he had worked on a farm as, in Alabama. And he lost a couple of fingers. And so it's oftentimes that I see when somebody's missing a finger, my question is, how did it happen? What exactly was that? And then you often think about it yourself when you are doing things around the house, as far as cooking, cleaning, working with hand tools outside. You think about, one, what is it going to feel like But even though you don't know what it's going to feel like because you never experienced it, you know what it feels like.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with, like, you know, if you were to injure your teeth somehow, if you're going to have your teeth knocked out or pulled, there's still that sensation because we're so sensitive about appendages, teeth, eyes. You know, whenever that hits in a horror film, the vast majority of us have never experienced that pain, but we all know for some reason what it feels like. So the commentary that I would say that's there is the writers of this understand what those fears are with that expectation of those motions with the mother cooking or at least chopping up the carrots. And in reality, it's for a lot of us, it becomes that thing of what do we respond to? And that's the way I would frame it. You know, what exactly are those things that we would respond to, as opposed to it's just simply she's cutting, she's got dementia, she's not paying attention, and she cuts her fingers off, and that immediately turns into, oh my gosh, Mom, what happened? And because that was what I was expecting, it was going to turn into she's got dementia, she doesn't know what she's doing, she didn't even feel the pain initially, and this is now going to be a commentary about being elderly or being I don't want to say an invalid like the father, but you know, being vulnerable at that age. And it makes you start thinking about all those things, just like you had your attention diverted with the mannequins, thinking something's going to happen there. You got the same issue here. You immediately think, or at least in my case, I immediately started questioning her mental state, her mental capacity. But then it switches to, this is a common fear that a lot of people have, especially when watching a horror film. But they were doing a great job as far as distracting you from one fear with another, or one concern with another.
Yeah, that's true. And I loved that they delivered on the tension there. You know, like every time you see a scene where someone like puts their hand down a garbage disposal,
yeah,
and like nothing ever really happens, and then there's an episode of Supernatural where it like totally actually eats this guy's hand, and I just kind of wanted to applaud. I'm like, thank you for finally completing the cycle there. Someone actually got to it and destroyed the hand.
We have to be careful because sometimes, you know, you get the hand down there, it chops up a little bit, but then there's a jam or it trips never mind.
Then you move. Like, that is the only solution. You move, because you know something is just waiting for you to put your hand down there. I don't care if you cut off electricity to the whole house. I don't care if you're Amish. It's going to start up and it's going to kill you. It's like,
I could just
amazing.
This is how we know this is how we survive life as horror fans, is by never doing anything. Don't
That's
move,
true.
don't touch anything, don't open any boxes.
Don't keep a bunch of creepy mannequins around. You know what? The first thing I wrote down was those damn goats. Because for me, as soon as I saw the goats, I was like, oh God, they're going to be demons somewhere around here. There's going to be a black one. It's going to, you know, I'm like, there's going to be something here with the goats. And they eventually get sacrificed. But I was sitting there, I was like, when are the goats going to attack somebody? When are the goats going to do something other than be goats?
Come on, goats. Earn your keep.
They'll eat your mitten right off your hand.
Yeah,
that's right.
You know what's funny though? Like, this is why I'm so oblivious. Like, so my husband does not watch horror movies at all. Like, at all. Mm-hmm. But I made him watch some of this with me last night because I had to get caught up. And that was like the first thing he said. He was like, oh, there's goats. You know, it's going to be satanic. I'm like, how did I miss this utterly? Like, the man has never seen The Witch or, anything like that. And he's just like, what? Listen to metal. What do you want? I'm like, oh, okay,
yeah,
good.
I would do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just totally missed that on that connection.
I literally hit play, saw the goats, and immediately tweeted my friend Dylan, and I was like, oh, there's goats in this movie. Dylan Irwin must love it. And he wrote me back, and he's like, I do love that movie. And I was like, I fucking knew it. But there's the same reason. I was like, goats, devils, demons, yep. So, yeah. I love that we all got stuck on that.
I was upset, though, when they roasted all the goats. I'm like, you could have saved one and made a meal or something. I mean, you could have done something. Because what else were you raising the goats for?
They left like 5 or 6, he said.
Question. I know he's talking about those ones that were still alive. See, I don't know. It's like roadkill, though. Like, you're going to really eat it? You don't know what exactly happened to it. It's like, what did that demon do to him?
Okay, but but these people are hanging out in this house no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like she would eat the goats. Like that's like the least weird part of her day.
I know, but I don't think the sister eats anything. I think that's my thing. I think that she subsists on coffee and cigarettes. So I think that's why she wasn't going to eat any goats. That's just my thought. But just because I was so excited about the finger chopping scene, I skipped over the whole. So this is one of the big themes for me, and this is something too that's like, so it's like a family theme, but it's also like a little bit of a horror movie trope, right? So they come back, the brother and sister come back because their dad's like about to die, and their mom is alone there taking care of him. So obviously, most people are going to feel this responsibility. We need to be there, and it's going to be this thing hanging over you that you should have done before, but you couldn't. It sounded depressing. It sounded not like something you really want to do. Like the brother had to get away, find time to get away from his job and the family and everything. So this is the thing that you would do, and you would feel this responsibility. And even when they're being flat out told by their mom, like, I told you not to come. And, we know after we've watched it, of course, like, well, the reason she's saying that, and at some point she says, it's not what you think. And part of me wants to be like, well, why didn't she just say, like, look, it's a demon possession. There's nothing you can do to help us. So, but then it's like, of course, if you actually get explicit with it, they're going to think you have dementia.
Exactly.
And they're going to come anyway. And they're going to throw you in a nursing home or whatever. So I was thinking about that, and like, and I thought that was so interesting because both the parents, even though the dad is basically completely gone, as like one of the last things he says is run.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to save them too. And like, as a parent, that would be the first thing I would do. Like, I don't care what happens to my immortal soul, please get out. But how do you convey that? How can you possibly pass that on?
Well, I think there's actually a really easy way. I think don't call the kids and tell them dad's dying.
Oh, good point. Wow. Fine. Just take it there.
I'm just saying, it's so weird to me. Like, am I supposed to believe the nurse made these calls? Am I supposed to think like I feel like it had to have been mom, right? So what the fuck did she expect? And then she's mad at them that they came. Well, they came like at the same time. So somebody had to tell them, and somebody had to make it explicit that, hey, you don't have much time, or they wouldn't arrive at the same time. So I find that weird.
We all have that family where they'll tell you some things, right? And they are expecting a completely different outcome than whatever you're going to do, where it's like, oh, my mom is sick or my, whoever's dying, right? And for them, it's like normal conversation. It's not like, oh, you need to come and see us or check on us. It's like, oh, yeah, I just want to let you know your dad's dying. Because one, I'd feel bad if he died and you didn't know about it. And I'm sure that then you would be questioning, Dad was dying. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you do something? Because in this, I think this is probably the first time I'm going to bring up Arnold Schwarzenegger on here. There was this
first time ever. I hope you do an impression.
No, I'm not going to do it. It's obviously not the first time. But no, in one of his interviews, like when he was younger. Anyway, one of his interviews when he was younger, he talked about how his mother had called him and said, "Oh, your dad is dying." And his response was, I will never forget his response. He's like, "What am I supposed to do with this information? He's dying. What am I going to do?" But that was his response. He's like, "He's dying. What am I going to do? What am I supposed to do?
We need you to come back."
No, and he's like, I can't disrupt my life. I mean, he had a really bad relationship with his dad, but what he was pointing out is like, okay, thank you for telling me and thank you for calling me, because my mom did the same thing the other day where she texted me and she's like, "Oh, your grandma, she, just got out of the hospital. She's gonna go to rehab for X amount of days, da 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 da." And so I just texted her response and said, "Oh, thank you." And she wrote it. And it wasn't like it was thank you for letting me know, right? And she's like, "Oh yeah, sure." And then we just went on with our lives. It wasn't like, "Oh, I need to call grandma and see how she's doing." Like she's like 90 years old.
Sure, but this is a woman who's trying to save her children from the demon. So like that ups it. This isn't a normal, hey, your dad's dying. This is, I need to keep you guys away from this thing. So what the fuck did she call them and invite them?
No. What I'm saying is if it were that type of situation, what I would have rather expected was I would have liked to have that set up where it's like, hey, your father's dying, he's pretty far gone, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to come and visit. You don't need to come and see him. Or he's really sick. And leave it as like, you don't need to come here and see him. You don't need to hint about a demon. You don't need to say anything. It just let them know, like, they do not need to come. He's being seen by a medical care provider. Stay away. As opposed to, like that open-ended, hey, your dad's dying. And then...
But I mean, how many, I'm sorry, like, and this may just be a Southern thing, but I feel like it's not. How many parents are like, no, it's fine. No, he's dying. I just thought you should be aware. There's nothing you need to do. And then if you don't do the right thing, you're going to hear about it for the rest of your motherfucking life.
Well, that passive aggressive, you don't need to come.
Well, and see, again, like you might assume your parents are being that way. It's like, are they being passive aggressive, or are they being martyrs, or, I'm with James. Probably the only way to avoid this, but I did wonder, since the brother had visited previously, like, did someone kind of check in? I don't know.
Just kind of weird to me.
I don't know. We've gotten really obsessed with this, but I guess in the future, I'd like to know how to avoid having my son come and get possessed.
Don't invite him.
All right.
You know what? Here's what you do. You write down a contingency plan well before, like, in case mom gets possessed by a demon.
It's like a cookbook, but not.
Yes.
It's like more useful.
It'd be pretty great.
But actually, I feel like from like a mourning and like a people being sick standpoint, it would be helpful, especially like, I'm not the kind of person, I didn't learn how to human very well. I've had to pick it up. And so I feel like there are a lot of situations in which, like, I have to Google the appropriate etiquette and or social response to something like that. I mean,
are you sure we're not related, Laurel?
Oh, you think that's bad? I literally write Laurel all the time and say, how do I deal with this? So, oh no.
Don't you know, like, all those moments where you're like, someone like, says something and appears a little bit miffed, and they kind of maybe ask you like, well, did you like the meal that I prepared by hand and sent home with you, and you never said anything about? Yeah. Why would you assume I wouldn't? Oh, well, because you never even said thank you. Oh, God, suck at this. Okay. So, I mean, I can really, like, some of these things I genuinely don't know. Like, so I will, my husband was in the hospital recently, and I just tend to be like very like upfront. It's like, what do you need? Literally nothing. Right. I don't want to be bothered, or I need food, or I don't know how to ask for what I need, but I think I need someone to bitch to, I mean, and I try and be like as open as possible with it. And if I don't need someone to come, I do this especially with my stepson, because, like, he's in his mid-20s and he doesn't, so I'll just be like, this is the information. I don't need you to do anything. So, but I think, I think Arthur would actually be fine. He probably wouldn't come get possessed. He would take me at my word. I feel like I've gotten off on a really long tangent here. I'm going to stop talking.
No, this is perfect. This hits into what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Long-winded families who don't express themselves well.
Well, here's the thing. You brought up something important, though, right? And that's, we're so conditioned by, what's the phrase was something like, tradition is what old and dead people peer pressure you into doing.
Oh, my God.
Beautiful.
That needs to be, write that down, please.
Slap it on a shirt right now.
Yeah. Tradition is what old and dead people peer pressure you into doing. So the way I've looked at it, especially in recent years, because I heard something similar to that, and I figured like, oh, let me go ahead and adopt it this way. Because I think the original thing was like patriotism. Patriotism, what dead people make you feel about your country. But that's really what it is. It's whatever the societal expectation is of you. Now it becomes internalized and like, this is how I'm supposed to behave. Whenever you go ahead and behave in a different way, it seems weird. Whereas if, like my parents, the relationship we have is lukewarm. I can talk to them, maybe 5 minutes out of a month or a month and a half, I'm fine. I could probably talk to them maybe 2 or 3 times a day and still be fine. But it's not a thing of like, it's going to impact my relationship if I go 90 days without talking to them or anything like that. Whereas what other people will tell me is like, oh yeah, I talk to my mom every day. I'm like, well, why? Why do you like, you're the same age as me. Why are you talking to your mom every day or your dad every day? But I mean, I get it because my family, we don't have that type of relationship where we drifted apart. But for me, when I would see, oh, me and my brother, we're best friends, or me and my sister, we're best friends. And I'm like, how? I don't understand that.
Because I would sacrifice mine to a demon in a heartbeat. I would take right off. I'm just kidding. I love my siblings.
But it's one of those things like you expect, like you feel as though there's something wrong if you don't do those things. And I think it's kind of the same situation with what's represented in the film. Whereas I would look at it as if one of my parents did the same thing, like what I said with Arnold, where it was one of them said, oh, your so-and-so is dying. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, thanks for letting me know. I'll text them, or I'll send flowers, or I'll do this. Because if somebody tells me that someone I barely know is dying, that's my response. Like it's like, oh, the second cousin that was married to your, whoever got hit by a car. I'm like, do I fucking know them? I don't. Or somebody I haven't talked to in 20 years. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I talked to their granddaughter on Facebook. I mean, I talked to my cousin on Facebook. I guess I'll say condolences or something. I don't know.
So you're telling me that cool story, bro, is not the right answer in those situations? I'm making a note. Sorry. Stop saying.
I wouldn't trust him. That sounds like the right answer.
I mean, it ends the conversation, I guess.
My 15-year-old uses it constantly, and it also ends the conversation.
Oh, I love to use it on men that are mansplaining things to me.
Oh my God.
I love to say cool story, bro. And just watch them implode. But I digress.
That vein popping in their head.
Yep. But I think it's interesting though. Like that was one of the early notes that I had and kept coming back to was the disconnect of this family, and how and whether. See, and I think one of the beauties of this movie is that, I mean, essentially to me the message is sometimes you're just fucked,
right?
And I loved what the nurse said about there are awful things in this world, and they come for the good and the bad, and they don't care, and I love that because it's like. I'm a woman of faith. I believe in God, and I am the kind of person who will pray for people, but commonly quietly, because sometimes that seems like an arrogant thing to say. But it's also not something that I expect to protect me, right? Like, I don't think that just by like, oh, well, I believe in God, it's like my, giant shield against demons. Like, I'm totally fine. I just thought it was so interesting that it's like, yay, it's not a matter of ticking a box. It's not a matter of sliding in under the Indiana Jones door or something with your like, oh, thank God I got my faith at the last minute. Guess I won't get possessed by a demon. Like, no, you're just fucked. Sometimes they don't care. And I thought that was just such an interesting. So kind of what I guess this is sort of a subconscious thing I do is always wonder like, what could have happened to prevent it? What would have happened that made this different? And I think that's the beauty of this is fucking nothing. It
Right.
doesn't care if you get away. It doesn't care if you believe. It doesn't care if there is love at the end. It'll blow that damn candle out.
Well, doesn't the priest guy, he says something kind of like that, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
The wolf sees, the wolf sees you. And I thought that was so good too about like you think your mom's crazy because she saw a wolf, and I thought that was such an interesting thing to say too.
I thought that whole scene was great. Yeah. He was just like that whole analogy just worked so well. So I had a different theory about the film, which is sort of that it does matter. And I'm just throwing this out. I'm not saying that you're wrong or I'm right or anything else, but like, I think it's very interesting how you went with it doesn't matter either way. And my take was the chaos that they've caused in their own family and the deterioration of their relationships and that depression and anger and whatever else is like blood in the water for this thing. And so it came to them because of that. But I mean, like saying that, I could go either way. And I think that's one of the things that makes this so powerful is that whether it matters or not, there's nothing we can fucking do about it either way.
Right.
So I kind of like that I can have both in my head now, and they both perfectly work.
I thought one of the most interesting and sort of poignant things about this too is like, I don't know if you noticed the repeat, it was kind of subtle, but where the priest, quote unquote priest says, I helped her, she needed help and I gave her that help. And when he's there again as the little girl or however that works, and she says, do you need help, Louisa? It's like this, it's almost like that's how you let them in, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's such a scary concept too, but also just really like on the nose as far as like, I am absolutely the kind of person that if I am depressed or just in a bad spot mentally, I turn to stone. I will not tell anybody. Like, it's physically hard for me to tell somebody to say, whoop, I'm in a bad spot. I'm going to need some space, or I'm going to need some help. And it's almost like that was the manifestation of an unacknowledged fear or something. It's like that by accepting that offer of help, by asking for that help, you've let the demon in. And I think that's such an interesting way to look at it as far as the way they presented it.
Right.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, look, I did have social commentary, and I'm not just gushing. But I'm also going to gush. So I'm totally hogging the conversation.
No, that's good. So you talked about the finger cutting scene. My next favorite scene was the shower scene, where like, holy shit. And yes, I did make a Trump joke before the show started, but I'm not.
Was that your jump scare scene?
No. Okay. No, the jump scare scene. So I wrote Don and I was like, man, I've made it like so long now without a jump scare getting to me. And it was that little girl that shows up and the way she like randomly pops next to her. I don't know why. That's the first one I've jumped at in a while, which is ridiculous because I used to jump at absolutely everything. So I was like, damn it, my streak is broken. But coming back to the shower, we always like horror has just always used the shower scene, whether it's to be semi-exploitive or just, because it's the extreme vulnerable. Right. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the best uses of a shower scene I've seen in a really long time. You usually get like the mirror shot and that kind of shit, but this is so much weirder. Because when she opens the shower curtain and her dad is standing there, I mean, you get the jump scare attempt there. You get the creepy factor of just, what is he fucking doing? And then he's pissing himself. And just all of that added up. But then he's not there.
Right.
And wow, this scene works so well for me. And I just wanted to say it took like this horror trope that I don't hate, but I'm just bored with it. And it just like made it a great scene instead. And so I wanted to shout that out for being great.
Yeah. Yeah. That definitely, I think you're right. That's a really good point. The way that they subverted and made some of these tropes like very much their own and made them like new and added like validity to them. Although I did make a note, thought it was interesting. Like the brother takes a shower earlier. Nobody goes and brings a camera in there. But as soon as there's a naked chick, I think we should go take a look, clearly.
It's a fine point you make.
But I also think that had a lot to do with that specific level of vulnerable. Because, and I'm hopping around quite a bit here, but a lot of what the nurse has to say is so excellent. Where she talks about the saddest thing being a soul being alone at the end. And she's talking about dying alone. Mm-hmm. But what becomes very clear from at least like maybe 15 to 20 minutes for the ending is that the soul left alone at the end is the sister. It's Louise.
Yeah.
She's the one who's alone. She's the one who gets left by her brother and everybody else. And to me, that is more sad, I think. I don't know. I think in theory that people dying alone is very sad. And and I'm sure that it is, but someone dying like that, totally unaware. I don't know. Please proceed. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No. I was semi-interrupting you, so it's fine. No, I was just going to say, like, there was part of me that, like, started questioning, like, was that the entity's plan was to get these other souls? Like, not so much Dad, right? Like, Dad can't put up a fight. Like, you want Dad's soul, hang out.
Yeah.
You don't even have to mess with anybody. If anything, you'd get more out of not messing with them if you're just after his soul, because then they wouldn't know you're there and you could grab it and run. And that's what demons do, by the way. They grab things and run. But so...
It's like a quick stop at Walmart.
But so for me, it was like, is this like a human trap? Like, the more of you that I get here, I can kill you off and take your souls too, and that kind of thing. But it really started with me thinking about Luis and how, like, you know, was he after her soul? And then I was like, maybe he's after everybody's. I don't know. Either way, I like it.
I do too. Yeah. Ooh, the human trap.
A human trap.
Human trap. Soul trap.
I heard there's a human trap run by a mouse. Oh.
I think there's more than one of those traps, by the way.
They tend to put them on each coast and then, you know, randomly throughout the world. So, Don, what do you got in your notes over there, since I'm now randomly talking about Disney World for some reason?
Well, I mean, I would definitely sacrifice my soul to the mouse. Anyway, how else am I going to get one of those cool movie deals or Disney Plus deals? The reading of the diary was one of those things that I thought was interesting for a bunch of different reasons. But then also the whole idea of the crosses, like when they went to go visit visit their mom, when they went to go see their mom's body in the morgue, or and she had all the crosses, or at least the coroner revealed, she had all these crosses in her pocket, and they were like, well, you know, she wasn't religious. That's kind of weird. And then making that connection with what we assume is the priest at the front door. At the gate of the farm, and you know he hands the cross over, another cross over. But I just thought it was so interesting how this film plays with so many things to where you're kind of questioning where it's going to go. Because I wrote down creepy priest outside. Because anytime I see a priest or a minister or anything like that in a movie like this, it's automatically a red flag for me. Automatically. Because it's never, I don't see it as kind of like when we look at something like The Exorcist, of like, oh, this is someone who's here to help. Every time I see someone who has, you know, a religious motivation or religious connection to organized religion in a film like this, I'm like, no, like there's something here. Like, you're here for some reason, and it's not necessarily for good. Yeah. So I don't know how either one of you thought of that. I don't think it was intentional by the writers to do that, but it's just, with so many of these movies, that's how I feel about them now, or feel about that character, especially if they're a priest wearing a hat.
Oh, is that because of Poltergeist too, you think?
Well, it's that, and then what was it? Was it Jacob or Isaiah in Children of the Corn? It was Jacob, right?
Oh God, yeah.
With that fucking hat.
God.
Like, anytime I see someone with some type of religious whatever, and they've got a hat on, I do not trust them.
So the Pope shows up, you're just going to knock it right off.
Well, that's a different hat. That's a different hat. Oh, I got different issues with the Pope and the Catholic Church.
Totally but it's, well, and I think it's such an effective way for them to do that too, is because, like, I mean, so they're alone at this point. Both they don't have the patriarch or the matriarch there. And that's one of those things, like, I know my husband mentioned after his dad died, like he had just like a weird moment where he realized, like, he's like, fuck, I'm the oldest generation now, right. You know?
Mhm.
And there's that feeling of like flailing, like, oh, we're not the kids anymore, and we're kind of on our own, and we have to make this decision. And
Right.
so when more of like an authority type figure shows up, as a pastor, like, and the brother was not super keen on him at all, but you could tell that Louise was like, well, here's someone who can maybe shed some light. Here's someone who can be company for us. Here's someone who maybe I can put this in their hands. And to an extent, they attempt to do it with the doctor as well. That's where the brother wants to put that response. I need a professional. I need an adult. I need somebody to take this burden. So I think it's really well done and kind of pulls the rug out from under their feet very much, because the pastor is like, I'm with you. I mean, he put off very creepy vibes like from the very beginning. But it becomes very obvious that he is not right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it pulls that, that possible rug of comfort out from under Louise, at least. And he becomes another threat.
I think he's my favorite character in this movie. The priest guy.
Is that because he's creepy, or you want to hang out with him?
No, because he's, well, I mean, I went to Catholic grade school, so all priests are creepy. So... no, I love the writing of this character, and I wish that there was I don't know, I don't want to say more of him, but I love like his character and the little girl. So like the human personifications of the demon. I find those characters really fascinating, and I think I would have liked even more of them than we got, but I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that being good expanded.
Even just to up the terror level or the distrust of what we're seeing. I don't know.
I'm still trying to focus on Laurel really messing me up with the whole they're not the kids anymore. Because that's another thing that you start to realize as you get older, whether you're what they call it, the sandwich generation or I can't remember what it was called, but the idea of you have your parents at a certain age or reaching a certain age, you're now just reaching adulthood. You may or may not have kids, and to make you that part of that sandwich. And the idea that, I'm turning 44 and I still have a hard time believing that I'm turning 44, not because of the math, because I can do the math. It's pretty simple. But just for the simple fact that this is not what 44 seemed like when I was 16 or 20 or 30, right? To give some of the younger viewers, younger listeners, an idea of this, Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon is younger than I am, but his character was talking about retiring.
Oh.
So again, that's one of those things, like I look at him like, holy shit, like, or earlier today I was watching the Golden Girls. They were all in their 50s when they were doing that show.
They're called the Golden Girls. Jesus.
They were in their 50s.
That's the end of life. What are you talking about? Give up.
They were in their 50s when they started the show, is what I should say. They were in their 50s when the show started. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. How? This doesn't make sense. What is going on here? So
it gets even weirder when you look at all the times that we've mentioned how like 30-year-olds played high school kids. So like the range of acting is like 25 years. You have to be 30 to 55.
But just the way, and what I'm getting at is that's another thing that I think they weave so well into this is you don't think about it, that whole idea of I'm the adult now. And with the parents, as far as like the mom, like just the whole part of them having to cut their mom down. Mm. And the one line that stood out to me at that moment was just don't drop her.
Yeah. Don't let her fall.
Yeah, don't let her fall. And when that came up, I was thinking to myself, like, well, shit, think about how bad that would have to be of like, okay, one, you discovered your mom, or you found out your mom killed herself, right? That's one thing. Excuse me, let me go back. Your parent dies. That's one thing. You find out the parent killed themselves. That's another thing. Another step beyond that is seeing it. seeing their dead body in the, in the results of them, what you believe of committing suicide. And then on top of that, the work they ramp it up here because it's not, oh, that she's dead. Oh, that she killed herself. Oh, you saw that she, committed suicide, or you believe that she did, but you've got to cut her down.
Yeah.
And there is no adult education course, any adulting class available that can teach you how to deal with your parent killed themselves and you had to actually, release the body from the noose. And then what's really fucked up is that line later in the movie of like, need some rope.
Yeah, that was good.
I was like, holy shit.
It was so good. Man, I just, the writing, the directing, like the scenery on this is all just like, I'm not the most critical person on movies anyway. So, I'm not like hugely hard to please, but there was just everything in this was just so perfectly atmospheric and everything. I don't think that there was a line that went to waste. Like when the brother says she made herself die. And this is to an extent, he's already considered the fact that there was no real way for her to hang herself without intervention of some kind because she didn't have anything to stand on. The tub wasn't there. And right. He says, she made herself die. And that's such like, I kind of wondered that too, though. There's this woman totally isolated, essentially already in hell because she's got her husband who's vulnerable, who she knows is being taken. There's nothing she can do about it. And she's living in conscious terror of this thing. And I had to wonder, like, did she consider, offing herself, like, in order to just escape from this, but she didn't feel like she could because of this? Or did she give into it once the children arrived because she thought that might be a good way for them to leave? And I was very interested in kind of that. And I love that phrasing. And it also kind of, to me, like, I think about death way too much, but circled back to the whole, like, a soul being alone at the end and that being the saddest thing, because it's not like I have a huge experience with death, but I volunteered in nursing homes for 3 years. And so I've definitely seen my share of it. And what I constantly noticed was that people, and my father-in-law did the same thing, they wait until they're alone quite commonly. My father-in-law there was someone in the room with him, like, at all times. And my husband came home to get a little bit of dinner and no one was in there with him. And I swear he just waited for that because he passed away like 20 minutes later. And so to me, it's so interesting that for us, there's this idea that, that's the worst thing. But, I had one of the women that I visited the most. I visited her for the full 3 years. Her name was Helen. She was 100. And she was totally feisty. Sometimes she told me she was dying, but she'd be like, "What? I told you I was dying. Aren't you crazy?" And I'm like, "Yes, Helen, that totally supports that. Absolutely." But she reached a bridge too far. She started choking on liquid. And so they added thickener, and she was just a big water drinker. And I came in there one time and this woman was 100 years old and in a wheelchair. She had trashed her damn room. She had broken everything. She had thrown things. She had just trashed the place. And when I talked to her about it, she was like, "I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that water. I'm not doing that thickener. It's disgusting." She died 3 days later.
Wow.
And so to me, it's like when he says she made herself die, fuck, I fully believe Helen was just like flipped the bird and was just completely done. She died of pneumonia in the space of, it was less than 3 days because it was a Sunday that I saw her. She went in, and she was gone by Wednesday.
Wow.
So it's the whole, like, she made herself die. That's such an interesting way to put it. And for Helen, like, it was certainly like, I wasn't, it's not like, it is always sad to lose someone. But to me, there was such power for her in that moment of like, just like, fuck you very much. Right. I'm not sticking around for this shit. And it's, it's like the choice to succumb to it. It's just an interesting way to phrase it.
To kind of tie into that, I was thinking a lot about the movie Relic. I don't know if either of you have seen it, but Relic works really hard to just kind of show the trauma and necessity of caring for our elders, right? And especially like how it hits like the responsibility children face with the reality of their parents getting older. And I think this film does it as well. I think it just does it in a different way. But like, even like, as you were talking about Helen, I was thinking about like the people that care for her and they think that they're doing what's best. but that's not necessarily what she wanted, obviously. And same with like the father in this movie, or I don't want to talk too much about Relic because I don't want to ruin it for anyone that hasn't seen it. But just that whole, like, we have this weird responsibility where we feel we have to take care of people. Right. But then it becomes, are we doing it the way they want it? And then also, like, is the way they want it, like is that harming them? And there's all these different levels of what each person involved wants or thinks is right, or the reality of the situation, and just how that may not meet the needs of the person. And I feel like that's a very real life horror that almost all of us will face at some point, whether it's getting old ourselves or taking care of somebody we love who's getting older, or a job, or whatever else. And I was kind of considering while you were talking how we can't really put that into a horror movie because it's so individualized that I feel like it still loses that actual human connection, no matter how good a script is. Because I love Relic. I think Relic is amazing writing, and it's still, I don't know, gets Hollywooded, for a better term, and I don't know. It's one of those horrors that I feel like just really can't even be captured because it's so weirdly individualized.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just basically has to be done almost in suggestion. Like, so that it's like that trusting your reader or trusting your viewer on this is like to take those, because you can't have all that exposition. You can't have the person going through in their head like, oh, this is what I'm arguing, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm considering. And people don't have those arguments in places where you can hear them, like, in that fashion. People don't address them in ways that lay it out for a viewer like that. And so, addressing them in these sort of brushstroke ways, and especially, like, I think this was such a great choice for a setting too, because this is a Texan farm family. And they, so they're all taciturn. They're Southern, but they're just not very vocal about things. They barely talk. They don't really know each other very well. They're not very connected. And they're not going to have these conversations.
Right.
Well, and they clearly don't seem like a family that's been overly communicating with each other to begin with. So
yeah. I thought, and so I'm just looking through my notes are very, very erratic here, but it's like, I feel like the big themes that circle each other here are like family and responsibility, and then like religion, and somehow that ties into, like, I don't know, the state of your soul and safety, and what can be a defense. And I thought it was so interesting too, the way that they had the pastor when he was talking about the wolf, and he says, the wolf's already in here, when they're talking about not believing. And he's, I always remember it from The Stand, like from the miniseries version from like 94 or whatever, when he says, oh, well, Nick doesn't believe in God. And Mother Abigail's like, well, that don't matter. He believes in you. The message being whether or not you believe in him, he's there for you. And here he's like, well, it doesn't matter if you believe in God. The wolf is here. And he says he's always watching, which again is this, it subverts it. It flips it, because usually that's the kind of thing that people say in a comforting sense. God is watching over you. God is always here. God is watching his flock. And here it's like, nope, it's the devil. The devil's here. He's watching. He's got your flock.
I like that. I had not even considered how that's a subversion of that expectation. That's great.
I just really liked how they did this, and faith in horror is one of those things that I think is so very interesting, that I think it's also can be touchy, because people can be very defensive about it, which is understandable. It's an incredibly personal thing, but situations like this are just so, I don't know. I love them playing this out. I love the examination of it, and just the nurse being there as the juxtaposition of someone who does believe and is completely unprotected anyway.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned family and responsibility. And one of the things I love most in this film is the brother's family. I don't remember his name. I'm sorry.
Michael.
And thank you. Yeah, like Michael has responsibility of family pulling him in two directions at once. And I think that in itself is great. And, because he's got, what do I have to do with dad? And then, mom, this happens. But also, I need to get back to my wife and kids, and I need to take care of stuff there. And while I think it's a little weird that he just disappears when he leaves, like he could have been like, hey, I'm out. And they could have been like, no, you have to stay with me. And he's like, no, I got to go, but no, we don't do that. He just fucking leaves. But I really like that it's pulling him in two directions at once, and that it's the same feeling of responsibility. It's just different roles. And obviously his sister's there to take care of this one. So there's somebody else to handle that one. Mm-hmm. So the logical choice is to go back home. Which leads to my favorite scene, but we'll get there soon.
Why don't we go there now, James?
Yeah, go ahead. We've been hopping.
What's stopping?
I didn't know if you guys had anything to add.
No, do it. Go. Because I'm chomping at the bit on this one myself.
Why don't you do it then, huh? Oh,
anyway.
No. So I read spoilers for everything. I don't know how I missed this. I had no idea this was coming. And I did read spoilers, so I don't know what the fuck I was doing. But when he walks in to his house and he sees his wife and daughter dead and the knife in his wife's hand, and oh my God, this scene was so great, right? And I was like, I'm sitting there like, whoa, it's still got his family. That's fucked up. And then it hit and he slices his neck and his fucking wife and kids are gone. They weren't really there. And then they walk into the house. And I know both of you will appreciate this because you know how nonchalant I am about most of the shit. I literally, my mouth like hung open and I covered my mouth and I was like, oh my God. And I never have that reaction. So, I love this fucking scene so much. And it just drilled in that you can run, but there's nothing you can do.
All right. Well, I'm the asshole here. Because I was sitting there and I was like, I bet his fucking family's not even there. I bet they're not dead. And then, he kills himself and I'm like, his family's they're not dead. I guarantee fucking to you they're not dead. I'm sitting there like, oh, there we go. Mom and kids walk in. Son of a bitch.
It's just so powerful though.
But no, that's the thing. Like the demon in this film and in other films as well, they often play off of what are your fears, right? Mm-hmm. And when you brought up the whole thing about being stuck between those two worlds as far as his family, the family that he created versus the family that created him or the family that he originated with, we often find ourselves becoming more attached, obviously, as we should, becoming more attached to the family that we've created because that's our responsibility now. Like, our parents, the circumstances may differ. We're the ones that raised us, or at least our family systems are the ones that we grew up in and shaped us. And we're not their responsibility anymore. And in turn, they're not our responsibility. But when you have your own family that you created, that is now your responsibility until adulthood or until a point when they no longer need you, right? And I definitely felt for Michael in this one because that is one of my fears. Is not that my wife is going to brutally murder our child, but that something is going to happen to them. And my reaction is one of those things I still haven't been able to gauge as far as like how would I handle that situation? Because I've informed all of my family. I'm like, don't expect me to put you ahead of the family that I've created. And it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. Like my wife and kid are going to come first each and every time. And she's pretty much told the same thing to her family. She's like, I don't want to be involved in any family bullshit. Like we'll show up for things here and there, but if we don't want to go to something, we're not going to go. We're not doing this whole family obligation nonsense. So again, I feel for Michael because I think that's how he lives his life of like, I don't want to be here in the first place. I have to be here because I'm their son. I need to be here to take care of them, but I have my breaking limit. Like I've met it. I'm done. I need to go home. And when he goes home, yeah, it's obvious that he's not able to escape what he had been exposed to because it follows him or beats him home and presents him with an image of something that he was fearful of, which was his family is gone. You know, in a brutal way, they're gone.
Yeah.
And then the demon then affects the daughter and mother or daughters. I can't remember if there were two, affecting his family by having to see the same thing that he saw, or at least similarly what he saw when he had to cut his mother down.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's the way it continues to affect people, right? Like whether or not its reach extends that far, whether it was simply that it was able to affect Michael because he'd been in its proximity, the legacy of that is ongoing. There's no way for them not to be affected by that, his wife and both of his kids. And that's part of the true horror too for him, is like, as he realizes he's been duped and he's dying and there's nothing he can do about it, he knows that they're going to find him like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, there was so much horror involved in that scene, like just on every fucking level. Yeah, that it was amazing. It was really good.
Have either of you been in a situation where, you know, somebody or something was telling you to get the fuck out, but you still stayed? And I don't mean anything like a relation. I just mean like you were someplace and all these signs were there that basically were letting you know, like, you need to be somewhere else.
I've actually had those, but I have always left. It's funny because I will commonly, well, when I was younger in particular, I would not always pay attention to those kind of warnings with respect to people, you know, and not because, I'd been trained to trust everyone, but it's like, I didn't want to be rude and I didn't want to cause, an issue by asking to be taken home or by avoiding certain people or by distancing myself. Like I felt like I wasn't able to do that. But in situations, and I've said this before, I'm a firm believer in ghosts, and I'm also a firm believer. I don't think anyone can look and say like I know all of the future, but I absolutely know that there have been times that something has reached out and said, not this path. I'm going to throw something up here, and it's not a matter of saying like, oh, well, I'm just not going to try. If something's hard, I won't try. It's not that. It's realizing, whoa, there's a lot of strange things that are being thrown up in my way right here. I should take a look. I should think, about this, whether or not, and it sounds silly because really in this instance, it probably was just my subconscious being like, do you want to die? Because you seem like you want to die. But I used to show horses as well. And I always wanted to do an Arabian class, where you got to dress up, and do like the costume class. I guess that's what it's called. It's the costume class. And you do, the really cool, like really pretty get up. And so I did that. And as part of the show, we were trying to arrange everything. And I had all these like skirts and scarves and things. And to get them to lay right, we tied some of them to the saddle and to the reins, which is a terrible idea. And as I was, and this was a horse that we owned, but his name was Helza Poppin for a reason. And he had been abused. He was an unpredictable horse. And I was riding, working the fidgets out of him before the class. And I just was suddenly like, and I had never in my life quit anything like that. Not because I'm like, oh, I'm a go-getter, but because I never felt like I could. And I untied myself. I got down from the horse and I said, scratch the damn class. I can't do it. I was like 13 years old. And I am convinced that if I had gone in there, because that's the other thing is those classes you take at a run, you go in at a canter and you stay at a canter. So there's no building up to it. And I'm pretty sure, because I've been thrown a lot, and it's fine. Like, I've survived, but I'm pretty sure if I'd been thrown and tied to the saddle, I'd have been kicked to death.
That's crazy.
So hopefully I would leave if there was a demon. Hopefully I'd be like, hard pass.
Mine actually plays into next week's episode when we're talking about session 9. I worked at psych hospitals and I worked at overnights, and I would go exploring when we were bored and go down to the tunnels or go down to closed off wards and different stuff like that. And only once, I worked at 3 different ones, and I did this at all of them, and I did it repeatedly. This was a normal thing I did at my job, right? And only once I opened a door to go down a hallway, and I literally felt like something was standing in front of me saying, "Don't go this way." And I closed the door and I left. And maybe it was fucking nothing. I mean, and maybe who the hell knows? But it terrified the shit out of me. So yeah, that's mine.
I'm glad that you didn't. I am glad that you listened to that.
Don, you're a black man in Mississippi. So do I want to ask you this question?
It's funny that you brought that up because yeah, I won't even bring
say it constantly. I had to be the one to say it for once.
There are a lot of places in Mississippi. Well, here's the one that, well, I mean, there are many. Someone asked, several times people ask me this question about like my feelings on certain flags, right? And what I tell them is that's an immediate, and I actually wrote about this at one point, that's an immediate sign that lets me know that this is not a safe place for me to go, and I should never enter that building. It's not a thing of like, oh, I'm afraid of this person, or, you've really done whatever. My thought is like, if I go in there, I know I'm asking for trouble, because if you're that proud to show that shit off in your private business or whatever, I'm like, I need to stay the fuck away from it. But yeah, there have also been other places where I've gone and it's been very clear, like, I just need to turn around. With many jobs, positions, relationships. Of course, the one place where my brain was like, don't do this. I still signed the paperwork and then spent a couple of years wearing green uniforms. It's like, don't you fucking do it, idiot. Don't do this.
It's the job thing. I feel like we get suckered into doing a lot of things and it's not even like for money, it's for the sake of supporting ourselves.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we feel like it's like, I don't know, I've got to do this one thing, and then we get stuck.
I mean, I think that fits in with Michael's whole take on family responsibility too, right? Like it's the same sort of thing. So I think it's our jobs. I think it's what we're expected to do with family, what we're expected to do at any point in our life. And just that feeling of, well, I have to do this. And maybe we do and maybe we don't, The one thing I wanted to add to your question about has anything ever, stopped you from going somewhere? I have this theory that's kind of the opposite of that. And it's like if I'm running late for something and I can't find my car keys and it takes me like 10 more minutes than it normally would, and then I'm driving and I see a car accident, I'm always like, if I would have had my keys, would I have been here when that hit?
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of the same thing if you believe in that sort of thing. I'm not saying anybody has to. I'm saying that's what I think about. But I think that's the same sort of thing. Like something stood in my way and made sure I wasn't in a specific place at a specific time.
Yeah. And we heard that all like so much after 9/11, right? Like, and I know some of those were probably made up because the number of people who were ostensibly supposed to be on those flights just obviously were way overbooked. But
right.
But there were definitely a lot of people that truly did happen to. They missed the flight, or they were supposed to work that day in the Twin Towers and they didn't. And I think this is where some of that religion, and people's objections to it come into it. It's like, well, what about the people who did end up in that car wreck?
Yep. Absolutely.
What was there something trying to stop them that didn't work, or was this, not the time for you to face that particular obstacle, but it was for them, and that's why it's like it's not something that and again, this is great with this movie, because one of the things that I've never been comfortable with is the idea that, oh, well, I'm a believer, I believe in God, therefore he's always going to favor me over people who don't, like I'm going to avoid the car accident because I believe in God. Like, no part of that is what I believe. But and so it is something too that that you look at and you wonder, like, why? Because I'm with you, James. I think those things do happen. I think that there have been numerous times that I've been saved from Honestly, like the most obvious one to me was I tried very hard in my 20s. I wanted very much to be a police officer. And I, prepped for it and did all the physical training, and the test was the easiest thing I've ever taken in my life, frighteningly so. The written test was, and I injured my hip. And I tried out anyway, but I could not run fast enough for that particular event, so I was disqualified. And they told me, they're like, we want you to try again next year, and so I did. Like, I very much focused on that. It was what I wanted to do with my life. I was very excited about it. And when I don't know if you call them tryouts or what, came around the next year, everything that could possibly go wrong did. Every message, even though I had been communicating with the recruiter for a while, all of her stuff suddenly went to spam. They did not make an announcement about the physical test until like 2 days before, and I happened to be on vacation when it happened. Like, all this like weird like little shit that was, and so it's like, yeah, I mean, that could just be technology. It could be any number of things. But when I look back on it, I'm like, and at some point in there, even though it was something I very much wanted, I started to look at it and say, something about this path doesn't seem right. I'm starting to get concerned about this, and I did not pursue it. And in looking back on it now, like, that was not the life for me. And yeah, I mean, it seems very on point for that, but it does beg the question, like, well, what if you don't get those warnings?
Right.
Well, and it could also be, what if you're not paying attention to those warnings? And it could be that it's all bullshit and that we just, we believe whatever, right? But I mean, that's belief in general. That's how it works. So it's hard to say. All right. Do either of you have anything to add to this film before we move to movie recs?
I don't think so.
Don?
I don't know, but do you smell them?
Do I smell what, Don?
Do you smell them?
God, I love that. There's so many good scenes in this film.
I'm good. I mean, the other thing I had, it don't.
All righty. Was it about hats again? No. All right. So this is the part where we tell people other movies they could watch if they liked this movie. Laurel, do you have any for us today?
I do, but I don't know how on point they are.
Cares? Just randomly say so.
Selling yourself short.
You like Mean Girls.
Jurassic Park. I think, to an extent, I don't know if either of you have seen The Manor. It seems to be a little bit of a low budgety one on Amazon Prime, but it has Barbara Hershey in it, and it was really good from the sense of like the inevitability, like once you get to a certain age, of your autonomy being taken away from you, and so I thought that was kind of applicable from looking at it from the standpoint of the parents, the right to die, the right to die at home, those sorts of responsibilities. And then the other one I would say would be Oculus.
Okay.
Just because of the whole, like, there is no way to trust what you're seeing. There is nothing that you can do to avoid being tricked by this entity.
I was actually thinking about Oculus when we were talking about how you can feel things even if you've never done them. Because that light bulb scene kills me every time.
Yes.
So
crunching on that shit.
And it was like in the trailers, and I was still nope.
Well, that and the mannequins, like where some of them are draped in sheets.
Mm-hmm.
That made me think of that too, because that scene in Oculus is so fucking effective.
Absolutely. All right. So for my double feature, I am going to go with The Wind. The Wind is currently on Netflix. If you don't know anything about it, just jump in and watch it. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about it. I do love that you brought up Oculus. That's a great choice as well. And I mentioned Relic earlier, which I think is super important. All right.
Oh, me.
289 recommendations today.
You know what? One day I will have that many.
I feel like I say 7 a lot, so I was about to say 7 and changed it to 9. Continue.
I said 7, I'll just say what's in the box. All right.
What's in the box?
So I would go with Malignant, His House, Hereditary, It Comes at Night, Session 9 you mentioned earlier. It Follows, The Ritual.
Yes, It Follows, definitely.
The Turning, Don't Breathe, The Witch, Conjuring, The Unholy, The Visit, as above, so below. And last but not least, I don't think I've mentioned this on any episodes yet, but Veronica.
Ooh. I have no idea why. I thought you were going to throw in a Schwarzenegger reference and say Kindergarten Cop. So I don't know what's going on with my head.
No, I could have done End of Days. I mean, you're dealing with demons there and possession and stuff like that. But no, I'm not going to do that, James. Could have mentioned The Predator.
There you go. All right, Laurel, that brings it back to you. Where can people find you on social media and order the 800 books you have coming out this week?
I'm always on Twitter, and it makes me tired, but I can't stop. I'm at Hightower Laurel because I guess Laurel Hightower was taken. I've never questioned that, but in any case, that's where I am. I also have a website that's woefully out of date, laurelhightower.com, and The Dead Inside is available on Amazon, and you can still pre-order below from the publisher, from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, and I believe it's up for pre-order on Amazon now. But if we can pre-order from the publisher, that would be swell. Let's support our indie pubs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Cool. And then our anthology will drop sometime in May, and we'll know dates later. So as always, it was a joy to have you back. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
You're always welcome to be here.
You can take my place.
You're not allowed to leave.
Real quick.
No, you're not. You're not allowed to leave. Didn't you learn anything about demons from this?
We told you not to come here. Anyway.
Thank you, Jane.
I'd love to be the person that the demon lecture, like, okay, look, you came. I know I tried to lure you, but if you could actually just leave. No, I'm settled. I'm comfortable. Not going to leave. You're human trap.
Like, oh, but your soul, like, it's hurting.
Oh man, there's that meme where the demon's like inside of you, and it's like, oh my god, what's going on in here? And the guy's like, I know, right? It's pretty bad.
How my head normally is.
Can I get you something?
All right, so I guess that wraps it up for another week. As always, I am James Spada.
And I'm Don Guillory.
And we will see you next week here at thenecronama.com.